All right, welcome everybody to the Panda Security webinar on getting started with Panda Cloud Systems Management. My name is James Manning. I'm a pre-sales engineer here at Panda Security, and I will be your presenter today as is usual. As we always like to do, just a couple of things before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. As far as interaction is concerned, you will not be able to interact with me directly today throughout the presentation. But you do have a little chat box there that you can use on your GoToWebinar client. So we do recommend that you use that. Put in any questions that you may have during the presentation. And as we get towards the end, we are going to reserve a minute or two to go over any questions that may have come up. Also, I'll be putting up my contact details there as well. So feel free to email any questions that may come up later to me, and I'll be more than happy to respond to those. So today is going to be a little bit different from what we're used to. We're going to be taking actually a pretty good look at systems management from the perspective of actually getting started with it. We're not going to have a lot of slide deck to go through today, just a couple of those to outline sort of which approach we are going to take. But a lot of what we're going to do today is actually going to be in the console. And kind of the whole idea behind this is, you know, over time, as we're working with customers and we're trying to be a little bit proactive on our side and spot problems and things like that to help you guys out, we've noticed there are people out there that haven't done a whole lot as far as moving forward with their consoles. And there's understandable explanations for some of those, but we just want to make sure that you have a good foundation at least to build off of moving forward. So that's kind of the goal of today. We really want to set that foundation for you and sort of help you grow. So as I said before, not a lot of slides today. Going to keep it as simple as 1, 2, 3. We're going to be taking a look at what a default console is going to provide you, what you can and cannot do. We're also going to take a look at basic steps. There'll be a few areas that we're going to cover inside of this. And then, as we always like to do, we are going to wrap it up with a summary. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Now, our first thing that we want to take a look at today is a basic console. Whenever you provision or whenever you purchase licenses for Panda Cloud Systems Management, we are going to provide you with a default console that you can utilize. Now, this console, you can go ahead and begin installing immediately if you like. That's kind of the intention behind it. But we want to sort of make clear what you do and don't get with this console. So right out of the box, when we start talking about sites, and we're going to go into this a little bit more detail as we get into some of the basic steps, but as we start talking about sites, every fresh out of the box console is going to be provided with a single site, a very residentially named home. That's going to be the site that every new installation is going to go into. You are also going to get sort of a basic skeleton, if you will, for monitoring policies. So as you see here, there's a default monitoring policy for desktop OSs. There really isn't much in there as well. You are not going to have any components. So right at the start, there's not going to be anything that you can utilize as far as scripts or applications and things of that nature to push out to your devices. So that's going to be empty. And also, as we go back and look at the installation, we go into add a new device, you're going to notice that this console isn't set up to utilize mobile device management. So we have the possibility of installing on a Windows device, an OS X device, Linux, network devices, printers, and ESXi, but nothing here for Android or for iOS. So if that is the case, you know, what are some of the things that we can do with this really basic setup? Well, a couple of the things that you're able to do as you get devices installed into the console is, number one, is inventory naturally. You're going to be able to take a look at your devices list. You'll be able to see which devices you have an agent installed on. We'll show you managed devices here inside of the home site. You'll also get a look at applications that are installed on the devices as well. being that you don't have really any monitor set up, you're not going to have anything that's being triggered even inside of the monitoring tab. And then you are also going to get remote access features. So you'll be able to remote into the desktops through RDP, VNC, also our agent broker connection. And that agent broker connection is going to provide you the ability to do things like take desktop screenshots. You'll be able to manipulate services. You have a file browser and a couple of other different things. And this is one of the approaches that we sometimes see these consoles being used for, is people primarily going in and utilizing it for the remote desktop and for the utilities that are provided in that connection. But we think that if that's really all that you're taking a look at it for, you're kind of missing the boat a little bit. There's a lot of functionality in there, even from a basic viewpoint, that you can really take advantage of. And it's stuff that you can just spend a little bit of time up front doing some configuration on, and it can save you a lot of time on the back end as it's put into play. So after looking at our default console here, let's talk a little bit about some of the basic steps that we can utilize to really sort of flesh out the functionality in this console. We want to take a look at, we're going to add some users. We're going to be setting up notifications in case any of our end users create tickets. We're going to look at how to expand our deployment options in here, look into branching out some of our sites, take a look at some of the policies that are available to us and how we can sort of fill those out. We'll dig into the COM store a little bit as well. And then we'll take a look towards the end at actually managing our updates, which is one of kind of the PowerPoints for this particular product, our Windows updates, being able to control those. And then, of course, reporting. We want to be able to set a lot of this stuff up and sort of let it do its thing and just notify us whenever it encounters something. So the first thing that we want to talk about is adding users. Now, the case may be that you are the only person that is going to utilize this console. There's no need for anybody else to have access to the console. And if that's the case, that's fine. But if you're in a situation where you may have additional users that are going to be accessing the console, managing different parts of it, or working with you to manage the site, that's something you want to think about doing at the beginning. And there's reasons for that, and we'll see as we go along. But the process of setting up users can be done by coming into Setup, the top right. You're going to have a Users tab here. So we'll click on that. Here is our email address that we created whenever we gained access into the console. But at the top left, we'll go through creating a new user. And now, what we recommend here is that you create a username and then enter at least an email address. I would recommend that you leave the password blank. You can, and we'll generate a password for you. But put in the email, put in the username and an email address, click Save, and it's going to be sent out to that user. They'll be able to go through and provision their own access into the console. One other thing to keep in mind is the component level down here, as you're going to find, is going to be important. As we start to go and build out that COM store, those applications and scripts and things like that have a component level assigned to them on a range of 1 to 5. And the component level of the user needs to be able to match or exceed the component level that they want to run. So if you have a level 2 component level here for your user, if they encounter a level 3, 4, or 5 component in the components list, they're not going to be able to utilize that. So unless you have other needs to do, or you have a need to do otherwise, what we do recommend doing is coming in to the component level, and I usually set it as a 5 on my side. Now, once your user has been set up, they've come in and they've actually authenticated their account, there's some other things that we need to work on. One is end user notification. Now, whenever we install the agent on the devices, one of the functionalities that our end users is going to have by default is the ability to open up the agent and access a tickets tab. They'll be able to create their own support tickets in there, contact us. It'll track in our backend system here in systems management. But we want to have somebody notified whenever those tickets are created, just in case we're not logging into the console frequently. We want to send out a notification when a user creates one of those tickets. So after we've created our users, we'll come into Setup under Account Settings. And if you scroll down here, about midway down, and we'll see Assigned Resource for End User Tickets. This is why I say it's important to set up your users beforehand, because we'll just go through the drop down, and whoever that may be in our console, we will assign them as the resource for end user tickets. So now whenever a ticket is assigned, or whenever a ticket is created, it's going to be assigned to this end user. Now our next step is to expand our deployment options. We talked about this before. We said if we look at the base console, you're able to install on Windows and OS X and Linux and so on, but nothing on mobile device management. And sometimes this is something that tends to snag people a little bit as they get introduced into this console. So our first stop on this process is to go into the COM store. You will see a component in here called mobile device management. This adds support for iOS and Android devices. This is an absolutely necessary component. So come into the COM store, select this item, and add it to the component library. It'll be downloaded there. We'll now see it in our components list. And when we return to our site and try to do an install, we now see the iOS and the Android options available to us. Now that's not the end of it. There's a little bit more that we need to do, particularly for iOS devices. Androids, you're ready to go. Just follow the steps there. But iOS is going to require another step. And to complete that, we need to come into our Setup tab, go to Account Settings, scroll down to the bottom, and you will see a section called Apple Push Certificate. If you do not see this section, it means you have not copied the mobile device management component into your components list. So once that's done, come down into the section, follow the steps here. It's really pretty simple. You're going to be downloading an Apple certificate signing request. You are going to upload that to the Push Certificate portal, and then they are going to, in turn, send back a PEM file, a PEM file to you. When you get that file back from them, you'll return here, you'll browse to it, and then you'll upload it to the console. Once that is done, you will be able to go through with installs on the iOS devices. And you'll see confirmation in here that the PEM file has been accepted and so on. All right, so now at this point, we've done a little bit of setup work. We've added some users in. We're making sure that if our end users create tickets, we're going to have somebody that is available to deal with those. We've also expanded our scope. We're able to install on iOS and Android devices. The next step that I always recommend is that you take a look at separating your devices for better management. And we do that, it's kind of a two-step process, but initially we're going to do that with our sites. As I said before, you are going to be provisioned with a single home site. Everything's going to go in there. One of the reasons we want to separate sites is for policy purposes. As we start to go create policies for monitoring and for Windows patch management, having additional sites gives us a lot more options as far as when we push policies or when we push patches and things of that nature. So the approach to creating sites is sort of going to be based on what works best for you. I've seen a lot of different combinations. I've seen companies where they have a lot of different locations, physical locations. So their first organizational concept may be those physical organizations. So maybe it says New Jersey and Denver and Orlando and something like that. I've also seen in smaller organizations where it's a single office, but they've decided to sort of dice these computers up by job function. You may have, warehouse and finance and order desk and things like that. So how that is done is going to be up to you. But the process to do it is really pretty simple. All you're going to have to do is come in, create a new device or create a new site, just give it a name. You can accept all of the defaults here and then just click save. You're going to have a new site created here for you. Another thing you can do, I get asked this a lot, is modify the name of the existing home site. So to do that, you can simply just come into the home site, go into settings, and on the general column, click Edit. That's going to reveal the name of the home site for you, so you can change it something to sort of match your approach. Now, I said this part is kind of a two-step process, so let's look at the second side of this. Sometimes what you'll find is you'll choose sort of an organizational concept. You know, maybe it is job functions, or maybe it's computer types, workstations, and servers. But inside of that concept, you need to separate it a little bit more. Let's say you chose locations, and one of them is Orlando, but you would still like to know inside of Orlando, what are the workstations and what are the servers? For that, we provide you with device groups. So you can use these on 3 different levels: account, site, or account and site level. Very simple concept. You just come in and you're going to add a group name. So we're in the site home. Maybe we want to create an additional device group called workstation. Adding devices to this is relatively simple as well. All we have to do is find the devices that we want. We will add them to device groups. Click Add. Now, as you'll notice here on the bottom left, our site device group is now populated. For one, it's going to allow us to pull those devices up quickly. So if we had software to push out for those particular devices or job functions, we can do so right away. But also what we'll see when we get into policies is this is going to allow us to target devices. That's really nice, because if you have certain, maybe finance people that they leave at 3 o'clock every day, maybe they're in very early, you may want to target their machines to start their Windows updates earlier than everybody else. So site device groups is one of the tools that helps us to do that. Now, the other thing that you're going to notice here is site device filters. This is sort of another concept that's available to you. This isn't really along the lines of organization as much as it is finding devices. This just lets us look at devices based on different hardware and software criteria. So we'll briefly explore one of these. So we could say, show me machines with memory that is greater than, 1 gig. And then we can give it a name, and it says memory greater than 1 gig. We could save that. By clicking on that, it would return whatever devices fit that criteria. So device groups, more of an organizational concept. Device filters are a way to look through those devices for certain criteria. So after we start separating our sites out, one of the things we want to start looking at is applying policies. A very good starting point, I believe, is with the monitoring policies. The monitoring policies are going to keep an eye on your devices for things like spikes in memory, spikes in CPU, and so on. And they're going to notify you before a small issue becomes a greater problem, or you have a device that shuts down and stops production or something along those lines. So to access our policies, we can do it on a couple different levels. We can have an account-wide policy that applies to all of our sites and all of our devices, or we can create a policy that just applies to a specific site. On both levels, we'll go into the Policies tab, and we can create a new site policy. Or if we have one that is existing, we can modify it as well. But for this example, let's start with a new site policy. Let's monitor memory usage. We'll set our type to a monitoring policy. We have to target our devices. We only have one in this console, so we'll go ahead and use our site group and say, I want this policy to apply to our workstations. And now we can add a monitor. As I said before, we wanted to use our memory monitor, but we have a lot of monitors available to us. Monitors to watch our CPU, as we said, our memory. We can also look for files and folders reaching a certain size, as well as the disk itself. We can watch the security center. We can look in the event viewer. There's a lot of different things that you could set up here. For our example, we're going to use a memory monitor. And we think this is a good threshold. Memory usage on a device has reached 95% for, let's say, a period of 3 minutes. We'll stay with the moderate alert level. And one of the nice things that you're going to find about these monitors is you have the ability to run a component in response to these issues automatically. So if there's a particular issue that you have that you've already created a script for, or you have an application that runs that resolves it, you can load that script or application into systems management as a component and then point to that component in response to these events. For this issue, we want to definitely email the default recipient. And we'll go ahead and create a ticket. Remember that our assigned resource is here. And this particular one, we'll say it's about a mid-level priority. We'll give it a 3. We're also going to notify this user that we've created a ticket. Once that's done, we can just sit back and relax. We'll save it. And then we have to push our changes. This is very important. Anytime that you come in and you modify a policy or you create a new policy, you want to push the changes. It's going to push the information out to all of our agents, and they'll be able to apply it on a local level. Our icon will go here from red to blue once that has been done. Now, we recommend that you expand on these, take full advantage of them. Like I said, there's policies here for monitoring your hard drives. You can see if a drive is filling up. You've got the memory ones like we've seen here. If there are specific event codes in the event viewer that you're aware of that you want to watch for, you have policies that will do that. And then there's a lot of third-party policies as well that are in the console. Definitely go through and fill those out, set those up, put your notifications in. And then you can just sit back and make sure that we're going to keep an eye on those things for you. Now, once our policies are done, we need to start looking at building out the applications that we have available for use. As it stands right now, the only thing that we have in our components list is mobile device management. So to rectify that, one of the places, or the first place that we're going to stop is the COM store. If you're not familiar, the COM store is a big application repository of applications. There's device monitors, there's scripts in here, and these are all free to you. You'll also notice over here on the left a listing for App Store. You can come in and add an iOS app. Maybe we're looking for productivity applications for the US. We can search for those. We'll get the results back here in just a second. And then we can go through and pick the ones that we are interested in that we want to push out to the devices on our network. We'll go ahead and grab a couple of these here. Let's choose our scripts. Let's see, maybe we'll want to audit BitLocker. So we'll go ahead and add that to our component library. Definitely want to automate disk cleanup, so we'll go ahead and grab that one. And if we ever need to check out logs, or maybe if someone asks you for logs from our side, we'll add that to the component library. Now you'll notice we go through and we click on these. They're added into our components list. These are now applications that we are able to push out to the rest of the network. When it comes to customizing these, we have a couple of options as well. We see 2 icons here on the right-hand side. These are important, particularly the star. As it stands right now, these components are only going to be able to be pushed out on a schedule. It may be 20 minutes from now, but you're going to have to assign a schedule. The ones that we're going to use frequently and that we want to use inside of a remote, we need to go ahead and click the star next to those. Those are going to make them accessible as quick jobs. We won't need to designate a schedule for it. They'll be available to us through the remote connection. If these components are something that you want to expose to your end users, something like disk cleanup here, we need to go ahead and click on the little man icon here for that purpose. This is going to expose this component in the end user's agent. When they open it up, they'll see tasks tab, and they'll be able to come in and actually execute disk cleanup on their own. And then the last part of this is the copy icon on the right-hand side. It's very valuable. You can click on the copy icon, and what we're going to do is we're going to expose the inner workings of this particular component to you. So you can come in and actually see the scripting that was done for that particular component. There may be something in there that you want to change. You may want to customize it for your network. By copying the component, saving it with a different name, you have the ability to go ahead and do that. Now, the next thing we want to talk about, we've already gone into setting up our users. We've created some monitors, so we're going to know ahead of time if any issues are starting to pop up with any of our end users' machines. We've created some components in there. We've grabbed some components in there. We've made them handily available for us in remote sessions. We've exposed them to the end users. So we're allowing them to do some work that's going to take things off of our plate. The next thing we inevitably need to look at is managing our Windows updates. You're going to have a couple of different possibilities for managing your Windows updates. We're going to find both of those initially under the Policies tab. So we'll need to come in and select the new site policy. We can either do Windows Update. This is going to sort of replicate what you're used to seeing as a home user, as going in and setting up your Windows updates on the residential side. Limited options here. You can choose what to do when updates are found or when you want to go out and look for them, and a couple of additional options in here. That's one option. If you're not going to utilize this and you're going to set up a more extensive policy with patch management policies, what we recommend that you do is to come in and turn off automatic updates. We don't want sort of conflicting approaches taking place. So we don't want automatic updates to be on locally, but while you're also trying to push a policy, you're going to get odd results and wonder what's going on. So setting up our patch management policies, we go into our policies, we choose patch management. And it's pretty simple to do. We need to come in and we need to target devices. So we'll use some of our default device filters. We're just going to apply the same thing to everybody. And as you see as we go through, these are preloaded for you, these default device filters. We can find them on the left as well. But we want to go down past the network devices here. We're going to let this apply to all of our desktop OSs. Once we've targeted, we need to choose a schedule. So there's nothing here that we're doing at this site that's particularly critical. So we want to go ahead and catch those Windows updates as they come out. So we're going to choose monthly day of the week. And what we're going to say is we want the second Wednesday of every month. Now we have a lot of time available with these devices. Let's say maybe they leave early during the day. We want to go ahead and run that window out to 8 hours. We recommend that you at least provide a 4-hour window when applying these patches. We'll go ahead and download them directly from Windows Update. If you are bandwidth sensitive at a site, you can use a local cache to download and distribute updates to targeted devices. And there is a failover. So in case something happens to that local cache device, you could specify that the devices go ahead and contact Windows Update at that time. Now, really, one of the only things that's left for us is our patch approval process. So we have the option of coming into our available patches list, saying, all right, well, these look good. I like these 3 patches. You can go ahead and say approve, and then they'll sit and wait. Whenever our next patch cycle comes around, it'll go ahead and push these patches out. If you like a lot of control over what is going out to your devices, this may be a feasible option for you. There'll be a little bit of work if you're just starting out, you don't have any patches applied on your system. You can find a lot in there, language packs and things like that. The other option is to use some conditions. So what we can actually do is come in and say, I want to approve the following patches. We have the option to choose category, severity, reboot behavior, title, and type. To show you how this works, we'll choose priority. Let's say we want to go ahead and say anything that is between important and critical, we don't need to know about it. Just go ahead and approve it. Go ahead and push it out to the devices and go ahead and get it installed. But let's say maybe you're in an environment where reboots are a little bit of a sensitive matter and you want to be able to control that. We have negation built in here as well. So we can say, yeah, go ahead and give me the important and critical, but if the reboot behavior is always requiring a reboot, I don't want those patches. So give me everything between important and critical unless it requires a reboot. And then you'll find what the available patches are after that, listed in the available tab. Now, once our logic is built in as to how we want to go about approving patches, what are we going to do afterwards? We can power the devices down after the window is concluded if we wanted. If a reboot is required, we can go ahead and push a reboot out. We have some safeguards there in case you got a USB mass storage device attached to it. Or we can say, you know what, I don't want to reboot automatically, but I want to go ahead and throw a nag screen at the user every hour. And I want to go ahead and permit them, maximum number of dismissals. And then once they've hit that third one, we're going to head and leave that up on the screen, letting them know that this needs to be done. From there, you'll save your policy. And as we said before, we want to go ahead and push those changes out to your end users. Now, once your policy is out, we'll be able to come into actually the Manage tab under Patch Management, and we'll now be able to start getting a breakdown of what's available for our devices. We'll be able to come in and see which patches are approved and pending, when the next patch run-in is, and so on. So at this point, with a little bit of work, we've really sort of expanded the functionality of the console. We've gone in and added our users. We've found some useful components that we want to push out on our networks. We have policies in place that's going to make our life easier and let us know if there's any problems beforehand. We've also made sure that our Windows updates are being covered, and that's incredibly important. If you've sat with us before on previous webinars where we're talking about Adaptive Defense 360 and malware and things like that, you know that vulnerabilities are a prime source for infection. So we've got that covered now. One of the last things that we want to take a look at is going to be reporting. Now, with our reports, while we do not have a sort of a custom report builder in here, just about anything that you do inside of this console can be tracked with one of these reports. So you have activity summaries in here, executive summaries, health reports, inventory age. We can look and see how old our devices are and when they should be replaced. Patch management reports. So now we can just get a report sent to us letting us know what was applied. We can also do a broad look through our environment and see which devices have which patches installed and what are they missing. Particular site activity and site health and so on. So there's a lot that's built in here. You can run these on demand. You're fully able to do so, and all you have to do in that case is to come over here on the right-hand side and either click the PDF icon, or you can click on the XLS icon as well. But you can also schedule these reports. So to do so, you just select which reports that you want. Click the icon to schedule the report, and here we'll say this is our 7-day site activity summary. And we want to schedule this here. Maybe we want to run this naturally every 7 days. And we'll run it on, let's run it on a Friday. That seems to be a good day. Then below we can fill out the subject, the body, and just say 7-day activity report. Send it to our default recipients in the console. But we can also add recipients. We can say I want to send this to James. Here's your report. Once that's done, all we have to do is click on it to save it. That report is going to run on schedule. We get our next runtime, which is going to be this Friday, and we'll get these notifications. What this does, along with the monitoring policies, is it prevents the amount of time that we have to spend inside of the console looking for information. So with monitoring policies, we don't have to log in and check what the history of each device's usage is, things like that, or come in here and run a bunch of reports when we're curious about something. We can set these up to run on demand, run on schedule, get them in our inbox, and as they come through, we can start to review them. It cuts our time down because then really all we need to do if something comes up on one of those reports is then log in. We don't have to come in and kind of hunt and pack. All right, everyone. Well, that was kind of a basic look at getting started with Panda Cloud Systems Management. As I said before, we're not going to go into a whole lot of depth here, but we wanted to get some bases covered. And we hope that kind of what you find here when you're looking through some of these steps is that just with a basic amount of configuration, Panda Cloud Systems Management can just greatly reduce your current workload. And then by properly configuring your contacts, your monitors, your reports, you can eliminate a large number of your surprise failures. Know about incidents before they become problems. And used properly, PCSM can help you actually reallocate time to more important projects. You're not going to have those surprise issues come up. They're not having to spend a lot of time, checking out devices, sitting in a console, things of that nature. You're able to automate a lot of this, free up some time that you can, dedicate to something that's more important to you, honestly. And with that, we will go ahead and open the floor to questions here. Rick and Fawad, I actually accidentally deleted your first two questions, so if you could send those back over to me. Rick, you had a question about data breaches. Fawad asks, can we monitor user activity to what extent? Are we talking about the end users and what they're doing on their desktops? So there's a lot of utilities there inside of the remote connection that you can utilize. So with the remote connection, you can set it up to where the end user doesn't even know that you're connecting to their device. You're able to view their desktop, you can browse their system, run any scripts that you wanted to, and so on. So the other question is, what identity management or integrations the new system supports? Can we integrate it with on-premise or Azure AD so all user accounts are imported from there? No, not at the moment. We actually use a federated identity provider. So that's part of the process whenever you go through and you receive that account setup email. That's what you're doing, is you're setting up an account with a federated provider. Contact me afterwards. There is some stuff we're doing with, like, I think SAML tokens that may work for you. Okay, so Rick asks, I have a client who is concerned about data breaches. Is there any way that a Panda employee would have access to client files on servers? Also, has there ever been data breach at Panda data centers? So let's tackle the first question, and I'll actually show that to you. I think it's a little bit easier to show instead. Let's just get out of the slideshow. Now, what we'll see here is if we come into setup, We go into account settings. We actually have built in a lot of security around this. So by default, we do have read-only, or we have read-only access into these consoles for support purposes. Nothing really that you can do from that aspect. Now, some of the things that you can do here is access control. So you can require two-factor authentication. And if you enable two-factor authentication, nobody can get in unless they have that token. You also have console IP address restrictions, so you can limit who can access this console by IP address. Same with agent IP address restrictions. And then you have restricted IP lists as well. So you got some good security built in to prevent anybody from accessing this console besides people in-house. And we've had customers that definitely put that into play. What is the pricing model for the solution? Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on however you see it, I'm just a sales engineer here, so they don't let me play with too much of the money. But what I can do is I'll have a rep get in touch with you afterwards and cover that with you. So if we want to ask, how can PCSM help in IT cost reduction in terms of the licensing and printer usage? Well, I guess there's a lot of different approaches there. I mean, you have the full inventory of the devices. You've got the hardware, the software inventory, all the way down to the device level. So it provides a bit of an awareness of exactly what you have out there. And if we start to look at going into the site level, we go into the audit. See, we have the hardware and the software, but you also have a licensing component here. It's good for a little bit of notification. What you can actually do is come into here, create a package for a software that you're interested in with an alert level over on the right-hand side. And what that'll actually do is it will send you a notification when you've reached a certain amount of installs. Allow you to proactively keep an eye on how many installs are taking place for a particular piece of software. You see if you've got people that are installing it that shouldn't be, if it's maybe got outside or something along those lines, and track that. As far as printer usage, with printers, you are able to include printers in here. And one of the monitors that comes with that is sort of a toner monitor. So it can monitor sort of the toner levels and supplies on a printer and notify you when those are needed. So Naeem, you said, I mean, other than what is available in ComStore, maybe it was yours that I deleted earlier. I think you were asking maybe about scripts, some additional scripts. We don't necessarily provide those. We don't keep kind of a store of those that are not already in the ComStore. Anything that we have, anything that we've created, you will find in the ComStore. Occasionally, from time to time, we have been known to work on something in particular, but it's not really something that comes with a service. But you are able to create your own if you have that ability. And what I find is that sites like Stack Overflow are a very good resource for this. What you can actually do is go on to Stack Overflow and sort of type in a problem. I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. Normally, you're going to find somebody that has gone through that process. They've created the code for it, and all you need to do is essentially take that code, change any of variables that are relevant to your environment, and then drop it in here. And you can do that by coming in and creating a new component. You just choose a category here for whatever it may be. Let's show you what's available. We enable you to script or code in several different languages: Batch, Bash, VB-script, JavaScript, PowerShell, Python, Ruby, or Groovy. So you could take all that code that you just took from Stack Overflow, drop it in here, attach any files that you may need to, and then save it from here. At that point, you've created a custom component. It's going to be available in your list, as you see there, and you can push it out. So we always tell people the world is your oyster in that sense, because you have a lot of flexibility. We don't restrict you to the components we create. We give you free reign to go make whatever you want to make. Naeem asks, where can we have advanced level training? Get in touch with whoever your representative is, your sales rep, and they can typically arrange that for you. The next question is, can we get the details of underused printers? Not natively, so we don't have a method built in to do so. All right, so with that, everybody, we are going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I thank you all for attending. I thank you all for the participation. It is always great to see. It makes my job a little bit easier towards the end. If you have any further questions, feel free to email me or get in touch with whoever your sales representative is. They can direct you to the right person. It may be me and maybe some other sales engineer. We will look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Thanks again.